hoping it's going to be a really informative and upbeat evening. And do chip in with your questions, because that's what it's all about, you finding out what you need to know. Pieter, we heard a little bit about you there. Just to give us a bit of context and sort of put it into reality. Obviously, you're a buyer's advocate. You help people who want to buy, who want to rent in Portugal. But what does a typical day look like for you with all that Jerry said there?
Yeah, very good question. So thanks for having me in the first place, and very happy to tell a bit about our work. If it's a normal day, I don't think we have normal days anymore since we started this company, which is the good news. And also very happy to try to answer questions a bit later on in this webinar. So back to your question, Carl. A normal day. I think there are 2 days. One is the office day, where we try to sit down in either our office in Lisbon or in our quinta near Coimbra. It's a bit south of Coimbra in the center of Portugal. And then we try to find out all kind of questions and documents, and sometimes it's legal questions from people that want to purchase something in Portugal. We just had a call with a lawyer because a Dutch potential client was raising a couple of questions: how many square meters she can build if she buys a property. So it's a bit inside office work, and the other days we are outside looking for property. So that means a lot on the road here in Portugal. Portugal is not the largest country, as we all know, but our region is quite big. So we work almost the entire country except for the Algarve. For the Algarve, I think there are a lot of good specialists already. So we really thought it was a niche market to start more in the Alentejo, more in the center of Portugal, and also north in the Douro region. Yeah, so it's twofold. Back to your question, Carl. In the office, and happily a lot of time in the countryside.
Yeah, beautiful. And clearly you do everything from start to finish, from the first inquiry right through to probably welcoming people with that bottle of champagne, if not the Ferrari and the pile of money that Jerry wants.
Yeah,
And tonight, I mean, we should say where we are actually, or what our photographs are of, at least. You're on the road at the moment, right? And the beautiful bird song we can hear, and your backdrop is Alentejo.
Yeah, this is Alentejo. I'm in Elvas right now, which is almost, yeah, I think if I look to my right, I can almost look into Spain. So Elvas is a beautiful historic city in the heart of the Alentejo. It's getting very hot here in the summer. So for people that love to turn the rain from northern Portugal into a very sunny and dry summer, you're very good in focusing on the Alentejo. We are here now in a very beautiful boutique hotel because we are visiting a couple of properties with some clients from Sweden, and tomorrow morning from the UK. So that's that's the bad side of the work, I say with a big smile.
Yeah, absolutely. I want your job. And I'm sure a lot of other people do who are listening as well. It's lovely. It's like looking at Gogglebox. It's lovely seeing all these couples here who are watching tonight. Well, I'm sure we'll have questions. So do fire those through to Astrid, as she's requested there, if you do have a question. What occurred to me there was, as a man, I mean, 20 years experience, you've got 20 years plus experience. And as a couple, you've seen a lot of Portugal and you've been all over the country. What made you choose to settle where you've settled?
I think we bought our first apartment in Lisbon, in the historic center of Lisbon, very close to the Castelo de São Jorge. The ones who have visited Lisbon, I think most of them have been in the Castelo up on the highest hill of Lisbon. In 2005, there was a lot of tourism back then, so we had a hard time to rent out our apartment. There wasn't a lot of online business yet, so it was more with flyers and the old school way of marketing. And in 2014, we bought a quinta, an old wine farm, half an hour south of Coimbra. And back then, we still had both our jobs at corporate firms with multinationals in the Netherlands, and we were traveling a lot through a lot of continents. And if we had some time, we flew to Lisbon and took the car to build on our dream house and to kind of turn this old wine estate into what it is today. And in all those years, we had a lot of questions from people, starting from friends and family, but also from many others, that asked our support or our advice to help them to realize, or to help to realize their dream as well. So that's what we started with. First of all, next to our jobs at multinationals. But then we had a good opportunity to quit our jobs and to turn this Enjoy Portugal, as we call it, this company, into a serious business. And we are doing so since 2017. And I think it's the best decision we have done and we have made so far. And it's lovely. So we are enjoying Portugal, and the objective of the company is really to help people from A to Z to search online, and then turn this online search into a more practical search in the countryside, or sometimes it's in cities here in Portugal. Until really the sign of the final contract here at the notary here in Portugal somewhere.
And I noticed you're in a quinta. You say south of Coimbra, and I think over to the east, right? This is an area of central Portugal, not far from Pedrógão Grande.
Yeah, exactly.
This is interesting, I think, because a lot of people overlook that area. You know, when people think of Portugal, immediately they think of Lisbon, of Porto, of the Algarve. And that part of Portugal has a lot going for it, but not a lot of people know about it, I think. What would you say about that area? How would you commend that to people?
Yeah, you're right. It's not yet the most sought after region of the country, which is a pity, because it's okay. I just go on, right?
Yeah, Jerry just wants to keep it a secret. He just wants to keep it to himself, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, no. So
just whisper your answer.
Let's all focus, Jerry, on the Algarve then from now on. No, joking. Okay. No, if you are looking for a real, authentic, traditional Portugal, with very nice, interesting cultural heritage, with towns like Viseu, Coimbra, as you were mentioning, Carl, but also Tomar, Fatima, you name it. It's a lot of UNESCO heritage sites, combined with very small villages where very laid back lifestyle occurs still. It's something you really need to look at. And also from an investment perspective, it's interesting because prices are still relatively low, and I think compared with high quality of life, it's a very good option to look at the center of Portugal.
Excellent. Yes, I would commend that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Well kept secret, and let's see for how long. We're getting some questions coming through now, but I just want to just a little bit more context. Portugal has coped, I think, especially well. I mean, it's all relative, but especially well with the pandemic. Would you like to comment on that? I mean, more generally about the great attractions of Portugal and how well it's weathered this storm so far.
Yeah, I think they decided to do the lockdown in a very early stage, and early stage maybe not as the first European country, but in a very, very early stage when it comes to people that are or were infected here in Portugal. Of course, that helped to spread the infections or prevented to spread the infections any further. Right now, they are coping a little bit with a. It's not an explosion, but there is some issues in, for example, in Lisbon and some other areas. But compared to many other southern European countries, they did a great job. It also has to do with a bit with the culture of the Portuguese, and I mean, people normally are not all of them, of course, but most of them are a bit still obedient. So if the prime minister at the 8 o'clock news tells them to stay home after 8, they will do. Whereas in the Netherlands or in the UK, people will find a reason to go out, right? That's what I think. So that helped big time. And of course, they also put it into a perspective because of the tourism, because they really were afraid that the tourist industry was affected heavily, which is. But right now they are opening up, and yeah, I think most borders are opened with most of the European countries.
Great. So it's looking as good as it can be under these sort of dreadful
Yeah,
circumstances.
yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. So let's go to a few questions that we've got now. I haven't got names with these as I see them, but maybe you could wave your hands if this is your question or if you're interested in this question. How long is the buying process typically? And I'll add to that another question, which is who is involved in that buying process in terms of lawyers, solicitors, notaries, real estate agents, interpreters, etc. Who are the team involved in that, and how long might it typically take? And I saw a wave of a hand there. Thank you for that question.
Okay, very good question. Hard to answer because sometimes it can be done in 2 weeks, which is very fast, of course, if everything in terms of all the documentation is correct and in place. Then it can be done in a fairly fast-paced way. On the other hand, we also had some projects that took us 9 months to get it all done. Especially here in the Alentejo, it can be sometimes a bit more complicated because the ownership is sometimes a bit complicated. So the person that puts his house for sale is the legal owner, but sometimes there are some other owners as well of the ground where the building is set. So that brings me to the second part of your question. It's who is involved. We strongly advise to always have all documentation checked by a lawyer, and if the property that you want to buy is a bit an older one, which is a lot of times the case, to bring in also some engineers to do a technical inspection. And for both legal and the technical part, we have some network. We have a very small team, so we don't employ people. That's not what we were looking at. But we bring in expert people, whereas we think we need them. And sometimes it depends a bit on the language skills of the buyer, but yeah, maybe sometimes we can do the interpretation to Portuguese or to French ourselves. But it strongly depends on the notary. Sometimes the notary doesn't accept our, so myself and my wife's interpretation, because we are, of course, part of the buyer's team, so to speak. So then you have to bring in a independent, and independent is always a bit, yeah, what's independent? If we have someone from our network, it's, I think, not an independent interpreter, right? So I think lawyers, and not a team of lawyers, but a lawyer from the region where you are buying. So a lawyer that's familiar with laws from the region that you are buying. Sometimes when it's an older building, this technical team, which will do a technical report, and the interpreter. That's it, I think.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. And then before we move on, because the next question is going to be, are there benefits if you're a cash buyer? But on the matter of cash, I understand you've got a very kind offer for everyone watching of a discount of €100 off your service. So don't forget to ask for that should you be using Pieter's services. So yes, are there any benefits if you're a cash buyer? And I guess this is connected with that. Are prices negotiable, and to what extent? I have visions of people with suitcases of cash at this point.
Yeah. Um, Let me ask a counter question. Cash means without a mortgage via a bank, right?
Yeah, we're
So
getting
not the suitcase, right?
not the suitcase.
Okay.
That was just my imagination.
No, exactly. Yeah, back in 2005, we the word cash meant something else, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
But nowadays, it still is a big advantage, but more in terms of speeding up the process, which is good because if you want to use a finance via a Portuguese bank, which is very well done because most of the Portuguese banks are really open to lend money to foreigners. But it speeds up the process because if you involve a bank with it, of course the bank also wants to do a thorough inspection of the house, of all the documents, and then we say, oh, we already did so, but that's not good enough for them. They will of course send in their people. So it's if it's a full cash deal, it speeds a bit up the deal, which also gives you a better position in the negotiations.
excellent. Okay, on that same sort of note there, can you elaborate? Thank you to Mark for this question. Could you elaborate on the typical mortgage ratios, loan to value, debt to income ratio, which I think is connected to that?
So the most of the Portuguese banks, they do a taxation of the property that you want to buy. So imagine if the property is 400,000 euros, or the asking price is 400,000 euros, then they do their taxation just to see if this valuation is good. And but normally it's more or less the same as the asking price. And then for UK or for other European citizens, it's normal to get a maximum of 70%, so 70% of that money in via financing via the bank.
Okay, 70%. Okay, excellent. On the previous point, Owen said it took 6 days for him to buy and move into his first property.
Okay,
it can be done quickly within that 2-week framework that you mentioned there, Pieter.
Well, then we need to have him on the team as well, right?
Yeah, it's probably a suitcase. Anyway, we have another question. I want to. Oh yes, it was about leaseholds. Because I mean, my experience in UK is, how you own a property, leasehold, freehold. How does that work in Portugal?
Well, to be very honest, I'm not really familiar with the UK leasehold constructions, and until now I also didn't see any of these constructions here in Portugal. So I think it should be possible, but as I said, I'm not really familiar with it. So we need to look into that a bit more in detail to give a fair answer.
But generally speaking, it's going to be freehold, is it, here in Portugal?
Yeah.
Right. I think that was what's behind the question there, is how you own it, and like.
You mean so that is for my information then. The freehold, you mean that's the land, so you own 100% of the land.
Yeah, for example. Yeah. I mean, in the UK, people sometimes have a lease on a flat for 99 years, and I'm not sure that's the other end of the extreme by the sound of it. And here it's yours and you own it.
Yeah. Normally it's freeholds. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Renting as well, you cover, don't you? Somebody asked a question about renting. and whether that needs to be done through a lawyer. How do you tend to approach rentals? Hand up from Kate there, I think, who may have asked that question. Maybe to get a foothold in Portugal and then to have a look round, which I think is a good strategy. Would you agree, Peter?
Yeah, definitely, and especially nowadays, because we have lots of projects running where people are a bit, well, afraid is not the right word, but a bit like, okay, what about this financial crisis that everyone is talking about, and what if the prices are dropping in, let's say, 3 to 6 months from now? So they prefer then first to rent an apartment, or depending on where they want to move into it, into which region. So we also can help with that, and um, then after, as a kind of second step, purchase the property in a later stage.
Okay. Excellent. Quite a specific question now. Thank you for that. I am interested in Coimbra, and that's a very good choice, I have to say, from my personal point of view and opinion. Would it be risky to look for an apartment to rent to students during the year and use it myself in other months? This is quite a well thought out plan, but they want your view. And is it risky? By risky, I mean financially hard to market, hard to manage, that kind of rental.
No, I think it's a very good formula, because Coimbra, of course, is town of a lot of students, and but yeah, as in all deals with rentals or with apartments, you really need to look out and to know how many time you want to spend yourself in the apartment. But yeah, I think it's especially in Coimbra, as it's one of the main university cities, of course, here in Portugal. It's a well thought, or it's a good concept. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And yet a question I missed earlier on, and actually a point of order in my ear here. The discount off your service, Peter, is for premium members only. So make yourself a premium member to qualify for that €100 off Peter's service, and it's only going to cost you 20 euros to become a member of Expats Portugal anyway. Well worth doing, I think. Yes, and onto the human right that is now broadband. Where should we look if we need fast broadband? This is a key question, I think, for a lot of people who obviously want to work from home. We need 70 MBS, that's megabits, isn't it, per second? Forgive me, the geeks out there. Yes, it is. I'm getting nods from people who know these sorts of things. Broadband, fiber, Wi-Fi around Portugal. What have you got to say about that, Peter?
Yeah, it's very good. I have better experiences with Wi-Fi, with fiber internet in Portugal than in the Netherlands, and it's very fast. It's almost everywhere, and maybe people. When asking it the first time with a provider, the provider says, okay, no, this is a bit isolated, and you're, let's say, 5 or even 10 kilometers from the town. But if you just keep on asking, and then they have the how can I say, they need, because there is this service, how can I say in English, so they need to serve, so they have the obligation, that's the word,
Yeah.
to yeah, to get you fiber. And we have some nice examples. Also, our own Quinta didn't have a proper internet in 2014, but now it's all high-speed fiber, and they come with a truck loaded with those big wooden pillars to build all over the place, and to cable it, but to wire it. But it works. It's very good.
Just for
But you need to be persistent in asking.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, and generally speaking, I think it's very good, isn't it, in many places? And of course, you have that option there that Peter speaks of, where you can lobby, because yeah, it is almost a human right to have broadband now, a connection to the internet. A question from Jenny. Thanks, Jenny. If we are buying a holiday home, is it still considered for first-time buyer benefit? That may vary, of course, from lending institution to lending institution. What might you make of that, Peter?
Sorry, so if you buy a holiday home.
Yeah, I guess to let out, you might want to tell us a bit more, Jenny, what your plan is here. But if you're buying a holiday home, is it still considered a first-time buyer proposition? Do we need a bit more clarification on that question?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know the exact context, so maybe
Okay.
we can answer this one offline
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
that's very kind, Peter. So offline, or just give us a bit more information on that, Jenny, if you will. And taxation, people need to know what they're up against taxation-wise, don't they? So if we buy to rent, for example, this is also from Jenny, would we be responsible for any tax in Portugal from rental revenue or profit, or in UK? Good question. How do people approach the tax on properties in Portugal if they're making an income from them?
Yeah, normally you pay about 28% tax over the rental income. Depends a little bit what your fiscal status is. If you're a fiscal resident in the UK or in the Netherlands or in Portugal. But to my experience, it's very hard to escape this 28%. There are some possibilities to pay a bit less if you sign a contract that is for the longer term. So, for example, not on a yearly basis, but for 5 or 10 or even 20 years. But yeah, that's also something yeah, you really need to look into if you really want to sign a contract for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So normally I think you should take into account that it's about 28%, also for holiday rental income, for example.
Okay, yeah, that answers another question somebody asked. Thanks for that. So going back to the nitty gritty then of the buying process, a question, can you elaborate on the buying process, i.e. the deposit required and the promissory contract?
Yeah, so normally imagine you find a nice property in Coimbra or whatever city or region, and the negotiations went very well. Then the buyer and the seller sign a CPCV, which is the promissory contract. It's all in Portuguese because it has to done by the Portuguese law, of course. But what we do is always have a English or French. But in this call, I think there are only English speakers, right? So we translate it all into English, and so it's very clear, and it's a very straightforward contract. Which is kind of a standard contract, and depending on the property and its specifications, you can make it a bit more custom-made contract. The question on the side, what's the question was about the percentage to
The deposit.
the deposit. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's called a sinal in Portuguese, which then translates to signal, which doesn't make sense, right, in English. So the deposit, yeah, normally it's about 10%, but some sellers want 20%, or we even heard about 30%. But yeah, normally you have to take into account that if you sign a promissory contract on the very same day, you have to pay 10% of the price.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And then stamp duty, taxes due on purchase, and
Yeah.
mortgage insurance. What about those?
Yeah, so there is a stamp duty here in Portugal. It's still very low. It's about I think it's 0.8%, and there is two other taxes that you have to take into account. It's the IMT and the IMI, and the IMT is something you have to pay every year. So it's the tax you pay to the municipality where your house is located. And that's also a very pleasant thing, I think, for Northern European buyers. The valuation of the properties in Portugal are still very low for the tax. So, for example, the property that we bought in 2014 is still only 70,000 euros. So we pay about it's about 4% every year of this 70,000 euros, which is very low. And then you have the IMI, which you pay only if you buy. So if you purchase a property, you buy that. All in all, it's about 8% of the purchase price.
Excellent. Thank you. We're getting so much value out of you, Pieter. Thank you so much for this. Another quite specific question here. Would there be an advantage of buying a house via a UK-based limited company, as in buying it as a business, over buying it as an individual? Is that common, and what are the pros and cons if you've dealt with that in the past?
Yeah, we have done. If it's really common, I don't know. It's a way to purchase property, and it has a advantage in terms of taxation and fiscal advantage. It's a bit more complex than the other way. So yeah, we really need to look into it case by case. It's hard to answer if it's more advantageous or not. Yeah, it depends on the case.
Cool. And so that's doable and subject to the specifics, and presumably as part of your team and collective, you have financial accountancy minds looking at things as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, back to rentals then, and the idea of renting for a year and settling in and just sort of being here in Portugal and feeling the ground out from from a rented property point of view and having your foothold. What is the rental process, and are the contracts usually 1 year long in your experience?
Yeah, normally they are 1 year long. Although, as I just said, sometimes people try to have a longer term contract because they try to not to escape or to avoid paying tax, but then there can be a better taxation or a fiscal regime. The process is very straightforward, especially in the bigger cities like Porto, Lisbon, and Coimbra, for example. There are lots of platforms, online platforms, to look for rental apartments, or even for bigger places just outside the town. Yeah, so I think there are a lot of good platforms to look at. And in my opinion, it's the market's demand also kind of filters out the quality of the rental or the apartment, so to speak.
Okay. And part of your service, you'd be happy to look over specific rental agreements, would you, and help people negotiate contracts?
Yeah,
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Connected to that then, you mentioned Lisbon there. What would you consider, this is the sort of geographical stuff now and location based, what would you consider the best locations within an hour's drive of Lisbon? And I'm guessing a lot of people ask you this because they want to be close to the airport, to the things, to the excitement of Lisbon. So what do you recommend within an hour of Lisbon?
Yeah, it's a bit of it's a matter of personal taste. Some people really want to be very close to the beaches, others more to golf courses, others more into a bit the Alentejo, which is also within 1 hour drive from the international airport of Lisbon. Yeah, it depends on your taste, but I think it's a very good way of working. We always, I should say, we always sit down with people and ask them the question: okay, what amount of time you want to spend from either Faro or from Lisbon or Porto airport? Because it can be very nice to be here, like I'm today in Elvas, which is almost in Spain. But if you have to travel on a regular basis to go back to the UK for your job or to whatever, then it might be a bit too far off, right? So within 1 hour drive of Lisbon, I think, or maybe a bit more, maybe 90 minutes, that gives you a lot of nice opportunities in terms of beaches. Of course, the southern part, the beaches south of Lisbon are completely different from the ones north. But north, there is more culture, like Óbidos, like Sintra. and more into the what's that, to the east, there is more more like space, like low density region like the Alentejo, which is more traditional. And we always call it with a big smile the real Portugal, where time sometimes stood still and is really like still like 30 or 40 years ago.
I saw some smiles on people's faces there because I think a lot of people want to connect with that real Portugal vibe. Excellent recommendation. I think Alentejo is vastly underrated personally.
Yeah, and to add to that, Carl, the further away from the big cities, the prices will not completely drop, but it's interesting. There is a correlation between the two, if you know what I mean. So the further off the airport, the lower the price.
Yeah, we have got some great questions, more questions coming in, and we haven't talked yet about the golden visa. And the reason I'm mentioning it now is because you're talking about going into, property further away from the big cities, and it's some drive away, but you find real Portugal. And now I believe there's a part of the golden visa program which allows you to buy for 350,000, not the original 500,000, which will give you citizen rights ultimately. Do you want to say something about that and this new 350,000 threshold, Pieter?
Yeah, so the new threshold is indeed more for properties outside the big cities like Porto and Lisbon. Also because I think about 95 or so percent of the golden visa were people that bought property within Porto or even more in Lisbon and Cascais area. So they really try to stimulate the process for people to buy property outside those regions and more into the interior of the country, and that's why they dropped this threshold a bit.
I think that's going to be good for Portugal in many ways, to encourage people to look beyond the big cities.
Yeah, definitely.
Great question from Marco. Pieter, what are your thoughts? Portugal's issues with demographics, with an aging and predicted decline in population in respect of property investment. Now, I heard this week that the average age has gone up a bit more, but I think that might be because of all the people retiring to the Algarve. But that is just a scurrilous rumor on my behalf. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so what's I have not a strong feel that there are lots of regions in Portugal that are completely empty with nobody there. So in Spain and Italy, and now I'm really promoting Portugal, as you can hear, you hear those stories about towns that are completely empty and so on. Here in Portugal, of course, in the regions in the north, think about Trás-os-Montes. That's a very traditional region, really up north to the Spanish border, really north of the river Douro. There are not big amounts of young people anymore because there is not a lot of opportunity for them to get a decent job and so on. But on the other hand, I think in the center of Portugal and also here in the Alentejo where we are this week, there are lots of new developments, new investments in tourism, but also in sustainable energy, carefully planned by the Portuguese government to keep young people that were born and raised here in this part of the country, to keep them here, to offer them a decent opportunity to keep working and living in these regions. So to my opinion, Carl, it's something that's I think it's turning into a very, not maybe very positive point, but it's turned into a positive tendency here.
I agree with you. The trend is really good, isn't it? And I think we've had a generation who have been part of that migration to the towns and cities and to the coast. And now the younger people, I think, are thinking quality of life. And, even just with the pandemic and people working from home, and coupled with the
Yeah.
favorable Wi-Fi and broadband situation you have in Portugal, it's very possible for people to live in near paradise out in the sticks in Portugal and earn a living. And corporations, I think, are of seeing the benefit of having people stay at home and work from home and not have massive overheads in offices. So that works well, I think, for Portugal and what we're talking about there. And on that matter of connecting up to the internet, to broadband, to Wi-Fi, somebody was asking. So we've had so many questions. I'm losing them here. But were you charged a lot to have that connection made when they put up all the telegraph poles just for your house?
No, no. It's so what we do normally is like in the Netherlands, and I guess in the UK it's the same. So you look online for the best provider, which provides the internet package and TV and telephone. So it's this 3-in-1 package deal, right? So the main providers here in Portugal, they normally serve, let's say, 90 or even more % of all villages here in the country. So you reach out to them, and then online they do this postal code check, which is I think in the UK the same, and they say yes, we can get you a fiber broadband 500 MB for, let's say, 35 euros a month, which is a good deal. And then this specialist comes into your place, and then he said, okay, but you're about 2.5 kilometers away from the village, right? Yeah. So what? Yeah. Okay. Then we need to bring in some help. But it's as I said, it's their obligation. In our case, with our quinta near Coimbra, we got 10 of those wooden poles included in the deal, so you don't pay anything anything extra. On the other hand, if it's really far from the village, think about 5 or 10 kilometers in the middle of nowhere, yeah, then I can imagine they don't include that. But normally, if it's in a normal distance from town, then they have to connect you to the net.
Different to electricity, obviously, then. And that's a good deal, isn't it? Up to free 10 telegraph poles with every Wi-Fi
Yeah.
deal. I'm with Vodafone. I didn't pay for connection. I bought a deal. I drilled through the cable shortly after it was installed. I phoned up Vodafone. I was able to speak to someone in English because I was really stressed and it was late at night and my wife was needing to use the Wi-Fi. You can imagine the scene, right? And I'm thinking, what are they going to charge me to reconnect this? And they said, we're not going to charge you. We're going to pay you the loss of service until we reconnect it again. And the guy came 2 days later and reconnected it without a question of about my incompetence and poor DIY skills. Amazing. Really good service. Okay, can a house... I'm really working you tonight, Pieter. Thank you for this. Our home in the US is owned by our living trust in order to avoid probate. Does Portugal recognize ownership by trust? If not, what do people do to achieve the same ends? Thank you for that question. Rune.
Also there, I really need to look into that into more detail. I'm not completely familiar with the UK trust details and so on, so we really need to look into that offline. Happy to do so. But in general, and I know that's not a detailed answer to your question, but in general, the Portuguese government is very helpful and favorable in all those situations. So I think there are a lot of ways to get there.
Amazing, yeah, and obviously that was the US, and if you've got a
the US, sorry, I thought UK.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it's the same. You know, in terms of if you've got a precedent from your country of origin, you can share that with the Portuguese government and see if there's a similar precedent locally here. Another question: we have a requirement of accommodation of 6 months that is registered with the finance office for our residence visa from the San Francisco consulate. Can you assist with that? So that's sort of inducting and embedding people in according to embassy requirements. Can you help with that, Pieter?
Yeah, also really happy to look into that in more detail. But yes, we already did so in a couple of previous cases with other US people. So yeah, happy to help with that as well.
All right. I think just a couple more questions then, because we have worked you very hard tonight. You've been incredibly informative and educational, and you deserve at least a super bock or a sagrish, I think, on the Alantasian
Very
terrace
good.
there. But if I could ask you, we haven't talked about the Silver Coast yet, which is a really good location
Yeah.
and destination for people. What small towns on the Silver Coast are lively places to live? I don't know if that's a typo, whether it's lovely or lively or both. What do you think of the Silver Coast?
Yeah, it's very nice. It's indeed within this 1 hour or maybe a bit more, 1 hour and a half drive from Lisbon to the north. Beautiful beaches, as it's in the name, Silver Coast. A lot of golf courses and a lot of culture, which is sometimes not the case if you look for beaches south of the capital of Lisbon. So in terms of culture, think about cities like Caldas da Rainha, Óbidos, which is a bit smaller, so it's not a real city, but Rio Maior, Batalha, yeah, it's all there. It's a very nice option, and yeah, it has one big advantage because you just jump in the car from the airport, take one of the big highways up north, and you're there within maybe an hour and a bit. It's very easy to get there, and beaches are good. Prices are still very affordable, so it's a very good option, which is yeah, a lot of people are looking for that.
Yeah, amazing. We were stranded. It's another story, but we were stranded in San Martino de Porto, which is a
Ah,
beautiful.
yeah,
Isn't that
yeah,
lovely there? A lot of
it is. It is.
Lisboetans go there for the weekend, don't they? And
Yeah.
we got a taxi. This is all part of an insurance situation with the RAC because our vehicle broke down. But we were driven by taxi from San Martino de Porto to Lisbon. I said to the taxi driver, who was a San Martino de Porto resident, "What's your favourite bit of Lisbon?" And he said, "The road back to San Martino de Porto," which it says it all, doesn't it, about the Silver Coast? It
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
absolutely beautiful there. So more generally then, just to finish now, Pieter, thank you so much. You've been brilliant with us tonight. And let me remind everybody of the offer. You need to be a premium member of Expats Portugal, but that'll only cost you €20, and then you can qualify for €100 as a discount off Pieter's excellent services. I'm interested to know where the inquiries are coming from around the world at the moment. You know, Portugal's looking really good. It's dealt with the pandemic as well as anywhere, I think, in the world. It's a fabulous place. We knew that before the pandemic. It's safe. It's beautiful. There's the real Portugal thing you were talking about that I think people wave your hands if you know what I'm talking about here. And that's, you've all decided that you want to be here, right? I'm not seeing too many hands. Oh, yes, I am. Yeah, there they go. Where are the inquiries coming from around the world to enjoy that at the moment? Who's ringing your phone?
At the moment, a lot of people from UK. I think it has also to do with the political situation, something like Brexit, I think.
I remember that.
Yeah, okay. French, but also people from Canada, South Africa, Sweden. Well, it's a lot of different places, and South Africa, and yeah, which really is interesting for us. Most people from outside of Europe, they have a different perspective. For example, people from South Africa, they really look into safety indexes, whereas people from the Netherlands or the UK, yeah, I'm not saying not familiar with it, but it's not as big as an issue for Northern European people.
Price of alcohol, isn't it, for the Dutch and the Brits? I think.
Yeah.
Partly.
Yeah, well, it's in terms of a wine country. I think a couple of years ago, it was hard to buy good Portuguese wine in the Netherlands or in the UK. But nowadays, it's brilliant wine. It's also in terms of cost price level, it's brilliant. It's the best food, the best wine. So yeah, that's why I think a lot of people reach out to us and try to get here as not as soon as possible, but yeah, just to make their dream a bit more easy.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thanks from Tazina. Thanks from Jenny for all the wonderful information. Thank you for a great webinar, Pieter. So lots of love and appreciation. Could we just wave our hands? All of you are muted to show our appreciation to Pieter so he can see there. Look at that.
Thanks, guys.
All those jazz.
You're very welcome. Thanks for your questions.
Thank you so much. You've been amazing. And yeah, there's still loads more thanks coming in the comments there, Pieter. A reminder that we're back again next Thursday on the 9th of July with, is that next Thursday? We will be back with another free webinar. The next one will be about schooling in Portugal, okay, whether to go public, private or international schooling, maybe even homeschooling, because people have had a lot more experience of that just recently. That's probably had people shaking their heads because of the experience they've had recently. Anyway, thanks again, Pieter. I'll hand back to Astrid or Jerry now, and thanks to everyone for your excellent attention as well this evening.
Thanks, Carl. What an amazing job. And thank you, Pieter. I think you answered everybody's questions, got through them all when they were coming through the chat. So thank you very much.